What's going on, Hacker Valley fam? Welcome back to the show. It's your host, Ron Eddings, and today we're zooming in one of the hottest frontiers in cybersecurity, the convergence of AI, automation, and application security. We're going to be exploring how AppSec practices are adapting and sometimes stumbling as AI power systems become the core to really everything that we do, especially in enterprise architecture, and how defenders, we all know that we got to keep up, and how we're trying to keep up with all of this change. So today's episode is going to flow by starting out with a news story that shines a light on real and emerging risks in the AI automation space. Then we're going to be bringing on our special guest for today's episode, Joshua Bregler, Senior Security Manager 2 at McKinsey, part of the QuantumBlack group, who's deep in the intersection of AppSec, AI, analytics, and automation. After all that, I'm going to share some stories from Hacker Valley Media, how it ties into vulnerabilities, applications, and how we have to keep up or make wiser decisions. So buckle up, because this one's all about scale, speed, automation, one of my favorite topics, and how traditional security controls are going to be meeting some brand new challenges. Roll the intro.
Who says tech can't be human?
All right, let's kick off with a news story that highlights a shift that we're seeing right now in cybersecurity, and it has everything to do with AI, automation, and identity. This week, Reuters reported that CrowdStrike is acquiring identity startup Signal for $740 million to tackle AI threats. Now, this isn't Signal, the messaging app. This company is SGNL, and according to this report, enterprises are struggling to manage access as AI agents move across applications, APIs, and cloud environments. Now, this is an interesting bit. We are all relying on AI at this point. There's no secret, especially us working in technology. We should. It's part of making our job a little bit faster. But we're also giving AI access after access after access after access. And that is now starting to sprawl into areas that are probably unknown. In some cases, the AI knows how to use these tools better than us. So what happens when they take a undocumented path that you don't know about, right? So this is a big buy, if you ask me, from CrowdStrike, because CrowdStrike, they're realizing that this IAM challenge isn't just going to be for users and people like you and I, but it's also going to be for AI agents. We want to audit them. We want to track them. We want to understand what they're doing. One of my very close friends recently was talking about how governments are likely to also put a tax on AI agents after some point in the future, because as they work more and more like a person, we're going to need to apply similar layers of security. But Uncle Sam also probably wants similar layer of taxation as well. So looking at this acquisition, what it really signals is that the industry knows that static controls aren't enough. They're not really doing us much favors when you have this new sexy beast called AI. Set it and forget it. That's a thing of the past. We want dynamic accesses, dynamic provisions, dynamic controls, but we also want to be in the middle as humans. And that leads us perfectly into our conversation with our special guest for this episode, who has spent years at the intersection of application security, AI systems, and enterprise scale risk management, helping organizations figure out how to secure not just code, but the systems and automations layered on top of it. Joshua Bregler is a Senior Security Manager 2 at McKinsey and QuantumBlack, where he leads security for AI analytics and automation platforms across global industries. Let's get to the interview. All right. So first things first, thank you for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Ron. Big fan.
I'm a big fan of you, especially because we had a live stream and One of our live stream guests said, "Hey, I was looking through the attendee list. Can you make an introduction to Joshua?" And I was like, "Sure. Let me give it a shot." And you were interested. You said yes. And then I saw that you worked at McKinsey, and I know McKinsey as a legendary consulting company. I used to work at Booz Allen Hamilton, and I had
Sure.
McKinsey aspirations.
It doesn't, don't we all? Don't we all? Yeah.
Before we hit record, you were telling me that you're pretty much responsible for a lot of the AI security. So, like, I look at AI security from like two different lenses. Like, there's using AI with security, and then there's securing the AI itself.
We're working really hard on both. Uh, Obviously, we have an entire arm of of McKinsey called QuantumBlack, which does nothing but AI and machine learning, and has for a very long time. We acquired them 7 or 8 years ago. I think it was about a month ago. OpenAI sent us a big old plaque about using over 1 billion tokens across the firm in the last year, I think. So
Oh, wow. Okay.
AI is expansive here at McKinsey.
That they love you. They're like, he keeps using all those billions and billions of tokens.
So many tokens, but it just goes to show how deep we're moving into AI and embracing it. But that also means we're securing it, and we have been for a long time.
From my vantage point, and I could be wrong about this, one of the most important elements about AI security, whether it's like security for AI or AI and security, is AppSec. AppSec powers the world. I was just remarking on another episode about how there's very few times where I've copied an API key and it wasn't from the browser. It's from a web app.
Sure. Sure. For the most part, I think a lot of the way that I approach securing AI is the idea that AI is kind of just another layer on software. It is application security with just a tweak in it. I mean, injections are still injections. Data, we call it data poisoning now, but integrity has been the central part of the CIA triad for since information security existed. So it's nothing from our perspective, from my perspective, it's nothing incredibly new. It's just a newer twist on things that we already know. Um, so yeah, application security and AI are hand in hand for what we're doing.
What would you say is the current state from like your perspective of like how good or how bad we're doing when it comes to securing our AI applications?
I think we're doing okay. As good as 7.5 out of 10. Um, and I think a good part of that 2.5 that we're missing is the unknown unknowns. Um, AI is so new that there's going to be new attacks that nobody's thought about, that even the attackers didn't think about until they accidentally stumbled upon it. And so there's no possible way for us to be able to defend it. But the reality is that most of the foundational practices that we already do are securing our AI anyways. Things like code scanning, secret scanning, um, dynamic analysis testing, our desk testing, for the most part, can run through it and keep us pretty secure. Now we have things like guardrails and whatever that can stop things like malicious prompting and prompt injections.
Something that I think is kind of changing the game a little bit is multiple prompts running. So like you give it the first prompt and then the AI, passes it to itself and it kind of like starts to create a agentic workflow or chain of thought. And then it, takes on multiple steps. Sometimes those steps are running a command, sometimes they're opening a file. And now I think that there's a extreme frenzy on good and bad for MCP servers as well.
Sure. Yeah, and I think it was just a couple days ago when OpenAI published that attack where they said, "Hey, we saw this attack and it was not obvious because they did that prompt building and they did those command buildings that there is no way in an individualized context you would ever think that any of it was malicious. But when it built upon itself, it turned into this instant attacking monster." Um, but what's interesting though is that even if you put these MCP servers, there was a paper released not all that long ago said that 93% of MCP servers themselves are vulnerable because of plugins people are using, or the fact that, again, they have a whole bunch of 0 days that nobody knows how to patch. And so when you're building out MCP servers, do they help with the context? Sure, but are they adding surface area that you may or may not be able to protect? There's, again, going back to the business part, right? There's a balance. How do you find that balance? It's a risk decision.
If there was only two options, go crazy with AI and invest like crazy, or start to pull back and slow down a little bit, which one would you lean towards from a business perspective?
I think it matters in finding the context of where AI is truly useful. So I have been thinking about the idea of, what are the threats now and what are the threats later? And kind of when I do that, I think, well, it's really nice that most AI is useful when it's in its most niche, in these small pointed tasks, right? This is where agentic AI has become popular, is this idea that you can build an agent to do this thing, and it's going to do it, and it's going to do it intelligently, and it's going to do it accurately. But the pros cons, right? The great thing is that means you know exactly what it needs to do, and you can scope those permissions in really tight. But at the same time, if it goes wrong, it goes really, really wrong. And it's really hard to tell if those outputs are supposed to be what they are until you see a trend line going in the wrong direction.
This reminds me of like the Web3 frenzy that we had back in like 2016 to 2020. Like where we were just trying to apply Web3 to everything. You know, you see in Web3 cybersecurity companies, and then Web3 authentication, Web3 data collection and data storage. And I was like, you want to store your data on the blockchain? And I see the same when it comes to people with AI. Like they're not necessarily trying to solve problems. They're trying to solve AI. They're trying to use AI to figure out a new problem and then solve it.
Yeah, they're looking for problems rather than solving the ones they already have. And really
Yes.
careful about that. When somebody says, well, I want to add AI to a product, say, cool. Um, to do what now? I don't know. And I will almost immediately say, then it lives in the dev environment where we have scoped this really tight guardrails until you show me real use, because otherwise it's just attack surface area that we aren't going to know how to protect in a smart way.
Yeah, it's wild. Has there been any opportunities that you've seen to onboard it in a safe way?
Yeah, there's some really great opportunities. We have found a lot of opportunities, again, in those niche problem solving, where we can create agents that are transportable and can, I don't have to have a specific model. I don't have to have a specific, we've tested for all of the different use cases and different, foundational mappings, and can kind of place them. But those, again, they're very specific job tasks, and we can customize those agents to do very specific things to, intelligently solve problems for clients. Um, and it's been super successful. But again, take it from the idea that we have to implement AI in everything across the enterprise all the time, and bring it down to the idea of we're solving this problem, this very well scoped, very well defined problem.
I think that's so logical. When AI is introduced, people they start acting erratically. Like they throw it all out the window. And to me, it makes a little sense to why you would. And here's why: is because we don't necessarily know the full potential of AI. So you see that it's good at summarizing a call and it's good at summarizing one call. So you're like, let me feed it all of them, and maybe it will give me back all the information I need to know about myself or my team or my business. And I think that may work for some, but everyone has a different type of business. Everybody has a different type of team. And like I think it goes back to your point of like, all right, sure, you have a hypothesis, but how do you apply it towards a problem?
You get into the really interesting issues when it comes to like ethics, right? And part of what we have to be really careful of is, as much as we talk about securing AI, it's also about the idea of responsible AI and responsible use. So let's take your phone call. Somebody might say, "Yep, we're just looking at trends, blah blah blah," and somebody else might say, "Well, we can also look at psychological profiles and understand how people are going to act." because we've had that, right? User-based, user behavioral, uh, once
Hmm.
upon a time was huge. A whole bunch of laws came out around how much you're allowed to do that kind of analysis, globally. Um, but AI is going to make doing that a lot easier and already has. And so, part of what we consider is not just how we can secure it, but whether or not we are allowing it to do what it's intended to do, and whether or not that's, ethical and morale use of the of the technology.
That's a big one, and I don't think that we even know ethics. Like,
No,
sometimes when I am doing stuff at work, like I'm not necessarily thinking about, is this an ethical boundary that's being crossed ever? I feel as though I'm always acting with integrity, but you learn by being exposed to different cultures, different types of people, and then you realize, oh wow, okay, what I'm saying doesn't jive well with everybody. What I'm doing doesn't jive well with everybody.
every culture has a different construct of what ethical means. Um, and so the idea of constructing global guidelines around ethical, it becomes difficult, if not impossible. And so it becomes case by case basis when you're doing things like deploying AI, um, and making sure that you are complying not just with the laws and regulations, but with the sociocultural expectations of where you're deploying it.
Yeah, I look at ethics as one of those blind spots that we're naturally going to have when it comes to introducing any new technology, especially AI. What other blind spots have you seen or do you anticipate to arise with these AI applications?
I think there's two blind spots. I think the first one is the now, and the second one is the it's coming. I think the blind spot is the one that we all talk about already. It's the data integrity piece of AI. It's the idea of how do we measure and validate data integrity? And it's been preached over and over again for a while. And yet, the idea of practicing it, because it takes time and it takes patience and it slows down the idea of delivering to prod as fast as possible, I think it's still a blind spot operationally. I think the blind spot that's coming is going to be identity and access management. These agents aren't human, but they're not exactly machine. They're not those traditional service accounts you can't that we used to build for servers and Lambda functions that are rote, right? And they have these very well-defined features and scopes. AI is more, and we have to rethink and remap our brains around how we give an identity and access to an AI agent with the understanding that there is probably a person behind it.
Hmm.
So I think that's the
Yeah,
blind
that's
spot that's coming.
wow. That excites me for opportunity. I just gave a talk called Hooking Before Hacking, and it was all about how I think EDR agents are going to ultimately be what we need for things like Claude Code, things like Codex,
Sure.
Gemini CLI, because they're not only using our identity, they're borrowing it from the CLI, especially now from the browser for those that have given a browser
Sure.
access. And then as they get your API keys. They're assuming another identity. So now you have to not only figure out how do I protect this agent from doing something that's not supposed to do, but also all of the identities and make a patch because how do you make a patch to an AI agent? Luckily, there's these guardrail features now in Amazon and Google, but I don't necessarily want to use that as a patch source because that's going to look at some cases, but it's not going to get the root of a security flaw.
Yeah, and it's bidirectional, right? So it's not just, oh, this AI agent is going to go run amok on things it shouldn't be going or running amok on. It's it is opening holes for malicious intent. Anyone who's going at it is now going to start seeing random holes open up and, connection and permissions chains that naturally shouldn't be there because as a human, you would not make those connections. But an AI absolutely could find some permissions chain to escalate itself across systems that you would have never thought of. Um, and because you've never thought of it, you haven't put things in place to defend against it. And that becomes the bigger issue. So how do you scope that? How do you control those agents and the platforms they're attached to?
We shall see. We shall see. I like the fact that I like the fact that you said identity and access management is going to be one of those big areas. And that kind of like makes me wonder, what are the current security controls that aren't necessarily going to work for AI or that are going to be quickly outdated? Which controls or frameworks do you think we need to reevaluate?
The idea of static permissions is going to have to go away. This idea that you can set access control lists and walk away is gonna have to be rethought. Um, I think that's a dead concept at this point. As far as frameworks, anybody you talk to that knows me for more than 5 seconds knows that I am a NIST fanboy. I love NIST. However, the CSF and RMF are both woefully um, undermanned when it comes to the idea of AI and how it intersects with systems and AppSec as a whole. Um, now, the AI RMF that they put out is lovely, and I appreciate it. Um, but that we are at an inflection point where no single framework is going to get you there, and so you're going to have to start piecing frameworks together in order to get 80-90% coverage, even just on the compliance end of it.
Yeah, you look at things like CSF, and one of those first pillars is asset inventory. And now you have an agent. Not only is it acting in a dynamic way, but it's also creating software dynamically, creating software, running it, and it might even delete it. Lately, for me, I'm not sure if it's been the same for you or others, but Claude Code has been dropping my artifacts in /temp. And I'm like, that's not a good look because is it persistent? Like if it drops a file there, I restart my computer or Claude Code kills itself, am I going to be able to see what it actually did in that artifact?
One of the things that I think needs to start evolving, let's call it, are the idea of how we manage and secure and push code through pipelines and the pipelines themselves. Because I think the way that we start to at least mildly address issues like that is by having that scan on every commit. And that's that CI/CD chain, that security chain in the CI/CD that lights up your scans. It lights up your SCAs, right? And so you at least get inventories and reports. We drop ours goes out and does all that and drops all the artifacts in our Git names so that it doesn't go away. And then it pushes it to a database on the back end. So we have historical context on everything that happens. But again, sometimes we don't know what's supposed to happen because it starts behaving differently. And we don't know because it's a black box why it's changed on some of its AI behaviors.
One of the hottest topics right now for cybersecurity from like a founder's perspective, I think is AI SOC. Everybody's trying to dip their toes in it from a vendor perspective.
I think it's too new to be useful. The idea that you can trust the outputs more than you would from a traditional perspective, I think I'm just very weary. And you're trying to teach your AI what is and isn't relevant, but if you've done even one little thing wrong and it happens, or a log is or is malformed, and it just sees the what is might be an important log, just happens to be slightly malformed, and so it throws it in the trash. That might have been an important log, and so you don't know what the AI is doing or thinking, or how it treats things that it doesn't see as perfect. So I'm weary. The AI SOC is
It's a double-edged sword because on one hand, you might not have the time to get through all of those alerts or vulnerabilities that are discovered. So it's like, okay, am I gonna like try to get through them by next year and spend a whole year trying to do it? Or am I gonna use AI to just say, YOLO, let's go?
yeah, and alert fatigue is real. Um, and I think as long as you can find a way to make sure that you are maintaining those logs and it's not doing something, it's not trying to transform the logs or it's not trying to screen them out, then I think you're safe at least running some analysis and some trials to kind of figure out, hey, can you see a trend that I don't see? Feed it some IOCs, right? Like recently that NPM issue that we had, right? That was generating logs. It was all kinds of crazy stuff coming out of those libraries. If you can send an AI to say, hey, here's the IOCs, here's the IOCs that we know come with some of these poisonings in these libraries, go fetch, right? And you tell it to just go fetch every system that has anything that looks like that. That's useful. Again, concentrated tasks that solve defined problems. I'm a big fan of using AI for.
That's a good example of like the NPM one. Like I think that was very impactful from like a awareness perspective. I think it kind of woke people up to uh NPM vulnerabilities that might exist. I mean, we kind of had that realization over and over again in the past, but it also opened up the realization that holy crap, I'm investing in MCPs and all of them have this at latest tag at the end of the MCP. I find that very bizarre. Like we've spent so much time with version pinning that, with the new paradigms that are emerging, that concept has gone down out the window.
And then, we've got this idea of AI red teaming, that all you have to do is teach this AI a pattern, and it goes out, finds the pattern and exploits it, and then reports back for the human to go ahead and start doing whatever they're going to do. So you have these patterns created by AI, but now you have another set where AI is using those patterns or using traditional patterns that we always thought were safe and organized, and they're using it against us in a hyperscaling kind of way.
If you had a magical crystal prompt that could help better secure applications, what would you tailor it to? Like, what area of application security would you first start with?
Development, straight development. I want that AI to fix and secure insecure code. I didn't say bad code. And this is where I have a lot of discussions with developers. Your code isn't bad. It is insecure. You give me an AI where I can give it a prompt to tell it to secure this developer's wonderful code as he's developing it, as he or she is developing it. Wonderful. That's the golden. I don't have to ask a developer to go back and figure out how to secure code that they've already done 1,000 lines into. And it's going to refactor all 1,000 lines. And now I have to have a business discussion about the cost and time. That's it. That's my magic. I think that solves more problems and saves more money for organizations than anything else.
That is the perfect use case. I couldn't agree more because the main thing that I'm using AI for, like I use it for some summarization, like it's really good. Like I'm not gonna lie about that. And I've experimented with it, like trying to write emails. I haven't had much luck because I like to write my emails like I talk. So like I don't want to sound too formal. But I've been using it mainly for writing like very small applications that are meant to be burnable. Like I need one application to do this thing for me now. Like go to these data sources, pull them down, and then I don't necessarily need that application anymore.
I have found a lot of success in things like using it for either writing new Lambda functions or fixing old Lambda functions. And it's really good at saying, hey, in these 3 Lambda functions, it has these packages. I'm just going to go ahead and go out, pick up all the updates, apply them, refactor for you. And then I run the tests, and these Lambda functions are clean and they're running quick and operational. But again, Lambda functions are about that big, and they're small and they're useful and they solve specific defined problems.
For anyone that's taken the time to get good at something, it's their time now because like experience is now paying. Your experience is your intellectual property.
100%. You know where AI has made a change because in your you've so experienced, you know what something's supposed to look like. You can walk by if an experienced painter can walk by a painting and know exactly what it's supposed to look like. And if AI came by and swooped a brush across, you know exactly that swoop is not supposed to be there. We are in that phase. I 100% would agree with you. We're in that phase. You know when a system has a file it's not supposed to have.
I've been told that some of the VCs that I know are coding now. I'm like, whoa, okay. And then a lot of my CISO friends are like, I'm back at it, baby. Like I got the time now.
Yeah, and it's interesting because those CISOs who used to code by hand, line by line, they weren't even tab finishing. They were writing it all out. They now know when AI generates code and they see something not right. They don't have the same level of trust in it, which I think is a superpower in this instance because they see something that's just not quite and they can go in and fix it and then move on. But it's already written the 10,000 lines of code that would have taken, taken them a week, which is fantastic.
When you look into your magical crystal prompt and ask it about the future, 2026 specifically, maybe the next 3 to 6 months of discovery, innovation, where do you anticipate AI fitting into security in 3 to 6 months?
I think it's going to be AI for security and not security for AI. Uh, there are some really fantastic products coming out. These AI security platforms that are, for all intents and purposes, AppSec platforms with AI focuses. Like AI first focus. Lakera is another one.
Mm.
As these
Now, who's
Psycho is
Lakera?
another one. Lakera.ai. So they do a lot of the like LLM securing and AI, Gen
I
AI
see.
securing. But they've taken these basic AppSec foundations and kind of wrapped it into a very AI focused platform that does some really beautiful, including AR red teaming, right? Like an AI red teaming capabilities that that's there, right? Like if you go and you look in the new Kali updates, they've got AI automated pen testing that is there and working for anybody to use in an open source OS. So let's wrap it in a platform, expand it and scale it for enterprise use, and then push it so that it reports in such a way that it's useful for us to go out and fix these products at scale, right? So that's what I'm excited about for 26, 27 is this idea that we're using AI to intelligently scale security.
If you had to give someone one piece of advice, someone that wants to get better at bringing in AI to their AppSec program, where would you recommend them to start? What would you recommend them to do?
I'm super on this train of AppSec and AI are not all that different. Map your AI systems to your existing AppSec policies. Where there are gaps, find the policy gap in your AppSec policy. Don't write a new one for your AI policy. Attach it so that your AppSec is leveling up and you're not just doing this extra thing over here that's going to need extra maintenance and personnel. That's number one. I'm going to go back to securing your data pipelines. Secure yourself, secure your AI before it gets to prod. It should not be a prod reaction. It should be pipeline proactivity so that if you don't have the tools, then there's a million open source tools that are going to help you out if you don't have the budget, right? Economies in a kind of way. Verizon announced 13,000 layoffs or a layoff of 13,000 this morning. Everybody's streamlining.
Wow.
There is open source everything for all of this. Is it going to be the gold standard? Probably not. But will it get you more there than you are today? 1,000% so. So build a pipeline, secure that pipeline, and then make sure that the reporting that comes out of it pre-prod matches with your organization's risk appetite and you kind of build yourself around that.
Wow. That's great advice. I mean, that's good advice just in general from like a workflow perspective, a pipeline perspective, whether it's your sales pipeline, your development
Sure.
pipeline. Joshua, thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy day, jumping on the mics with us. I'm going to drop your information in the show notes and or description wherever you're listening or watching so everybody can stay up to date with you. I would highly recommend checking out some of these frameworks that Joshua recommended and mentioned, like the NIST RMF framework. So, Joshua, thank you again. Such a great conversation with Joshua. And it really got me thinking about something that I've been wrestling with myself. How fast we're building right now. Think about how fast you're building. For me, my speed in building new things has skyrocketed. Because let's be real, today you don't need a full engineering team or a $200,000 budget to build something that's actually impressive. I've seen teenagers build amazing things even with AI. If you have even $100 to spare, then you can sign up for several different tools. You can run agents. You can probably even spin up some apps and keep that budget for under $100 for that month. And for me, that's a blessing and a curse, because when creation becomes that easy, scaling in your mind, it feels like it's going to be even easier. And when you scale fast, guess what? You start to pay attention to less. Let me give you a real example in my life at Hacker Valley Media. A while back, last year, our team grew very quickly and we started to grow in team members. And when your team starts to grow large and it's also growing fast, communication just about becomes everyone's full-time job. We were drowning in meetings and drowning in Slack messages. And what it really boiled down to was we didn't have the right systems in place to streamline information. We had a project management system we would put our tasks in, but it would often go under realized as to what was the final output really supposed to be. So you might be wondering, how does this tie back into AI? Simple. AI accelerates everything. Just imagine if my team was drowning in miscommunication and missed opportunities, and we tried to also implement new tools that are developed by AI. That's going to be complete danger. AI can absolutely help teams do more with less. That's no question. But it can also distract you, can overwhelm you, and it can create blind spots if you're not careful. Because once an AI system starts proving itself, you start validating its outputs less and less and less. You trust it, you rely on it, and sometimes you even stop checking its work. At the end of the day, AppSec has transformed into being about systems, pipelines, and AI models, and the merging of disciplines. A massive thank you to Joshua Bregler for joining us and sharing his insights on where AppSec meets AI security and how AI leaders should adopt in the world of automation. And thank you for tuning in to this conversation. If you enjoyed it, it would mean the world to us if you shared it with a team member, friend, or colleague. Anyone who needs to hear this one. Be sure to also follow Hacker Valley Studio wherever you listen to podcasts. And with that, we will see everyone next time.